So after my thru hike in 2011, I wrote a book called Appalachian Trials, which deals with the psychological, emotional component of thru hiking. And in the book, I recommend people go through a practice of writing down all the reasons why they're thru hiking, because almost without fail, they're going to end up asking themselves this question in the throes of battle. And without a convincing answer, they're more likely to get off the trail. Did you ever ask yourself why you're doing this? And if so, what were your reasons?
Oh, definitely. I mean, and I would remind myself, that's something that, I'll have the doubts and I'll be like, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. It seems, crazy. I mean, why don't I just come back and enjoy it to take, 6 months to do it? But I reminded myself that I really wanted to really see what I was made of. And by doing something like a record attempt, it's just a different experience. I'm not saying you can't get that out of a 6-month thru hike, but you're really pushed to the edge. And I think one of the big reasons was my wife. I mean, she was so supportive in this journey, and I really dedicated this run and hike to her, and just how she has supported me, with my career, and she was out there, doing it day after day on the trail. And, then of course, the number of people and, that were, following me, and it gave me that extra kind of boost. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, it's like just getting to the end of the trail is a good reason. Yeah. Sometimes that was the only thing. Like having a record definitely pushed me more and caused me to not sleep as much towards the end, and go through maybe a lot more discomfort than I would if I just decided, forget the record. And there were times where I'm just like, record's out of the question. Yeah. Let's just get to, let's get to the end of the trail. Let's get to Katahdin, and that be the focus. But because I had also that record. So I think having a goal too helps. And that might be a daily goal, or, as a lot of thru-hikers know, like getting to that shelter or getting to the hostel, getting to that road crossing, get to that mail drop might be the goal that really spurs you on. And I know I talked to a lot of thru-hikers, and they joined me, for sometimes 5 miles, sometimes 8 miles, running with like a more empty pack because they were getting a resupply.
Sure.
And they are like, I would have never run or gone this fast to the next road crossing or to their mail drop, because they have that motivation. So you just have to find those little motivators, I think, on a daily or weekly basis, as well as, the big ones like you mentioned.
Sure. And that kind of segues perfectly into the next question. In your book, Eat and Run, you do offer a lot of advice on just the training techniques and like the stride, as well as the nutrition. But you also credit, it seems like, the majority of your success to your mindset. So is there one piece of advice, or maybe a few pieces of advice, that you'd offer to endurance athletes, whether it be aspiring ultramarathon runners or thru-hikers, on achieving the mental fortitude necessary for success?
I think the big one is, first and foremost, you have to be open to failure and facing your fears, because it takes a lot to put yourself out there. And I give a lot of people credit who even just start the trail. I mean, just if you think about it, how many people do something like the Appalachian Trail, or run a 100-mile race, or run their first 5K or 10K. I mean, you have to put yourself out there. So I think that the biggest mental barrier for a lot of people is just, facing your fears, as well as don't be afraid to try something that you think you might fail at, or you may not be successful at. And then secondly, I think once you're in the moment, or say struggling, you have to find, like you mentioned, whether it's having reasons or having some reminders of like why you're doing this. I think dedications, whether you dedicate your journey or the discomfort to, say, somebody who can't, or maybe somebody who's been influential in your life, maybe somebody who's passed away, maybe somebody who's struggling with a disease. Some people are also doing things for charity. And I think that can be a strong motivator too. You're not out there just for yourself. You're out there maybe for somebody else, or for a bunch of people, and for a cause. That can be super strong. And then having mantras too, having, little bits of, I guess, motivation in that regard, just to keep spurring you on might be a helpful way to go too. And then having motivators such as, say, a goal, or like for myself, it was the record. Putting some real concrete things, whether it's on a daily basis or whether it's an hourly basis. And for me, sometimes it's as small as like getting to the next mountaintop, or I'm going to get to the next shady spot. And on the Appalachian Trail, there's plenty of shade. You're in the tunnel the whole time, but having little landmarks that give you perspective
Yeah.
can be really key. And sometimes it's just putting one foot in front of
Yeah.
front of the other. I remember in Maine and New Hampshire where, I was just so sleep deprived, so like strung out, so tired and fatigued. And it was sometimes just putting one foot in front of the other, because you can't look at the masses of rocks and the climbs and the descents. You just have to like literally stay focused on what you're doing. And I think that's the beauty of the trail, is that as hard as it is, it forces you to stay in the moment.
You mentioned mantras in your book. I believe the quote was, because sometimes you just do things. Was that the mantra that carried you through on the AT, or?
Oh, I had several. It definitely was that. And then I remember mentioned this too in Eat and Run, how my yoga instructor gave me this, is like, this is what you came for. And, I think that's a strong one too, because nobody was forcing me to do it. I could decide at any point. I mean, I think that's the beauty of endurance and doing something like a thru hike, is that no one's forcing you to do it. And you have to decide, do I go further today? Do I take it easy? Do I take several rest days? Or do I keep pressing forward? And you have to find a way through. So I think, reminding yourself that no one else is forcing you to do this. This is a decision, and this is what you came for.
Yeah.
There are other times, things like, I remember songs that would pop into my head, or I'd be listening to music from time to time. And, one song by A Cloud Cult came to mind where it was like, take your medicine. And my medicine each day was putting in 50 miles of the Appalachian Trail, and, getting through all the just adversity that came with that. And, that was my medicine. And it was, of course, at the moment you're thinking to yourself, again, this is just so hard. It's, hot, or it's cold, or I'm just miserable right now. But there's transformation in misery and adversity. And I think that's the most powerful times.
Yeah, that's a powerful quote. I couldn't agree more. So shifting gears a little bit, thru-hikers are known for eating notoriously awful diets while on the trail. I'm sure you saw this a little bit. Typically, calorie quantity takes precedence over quality. As someone who considers nutrition a keystone of success, is there one piece of advice that you'd offer to thru-hikers on how they can improve their nutrition, whether it's on trail or in town, keeping in mind that obviously they don't have access to kitchens most of the time?
Definitely. And I fell into the same category too. I'll be totally honest. Like a lot of my, followers were so surprised, like, why are you eating, vegan pizza and vegan ice cream? But the fact is you crave calories. And so I think the main thing is probably the takeaway from that is that this is a temporary situation. And for me, it was even though I had my crew and they could go into town, a lot of times it still was a struggle, because they didn't always, it's not like they could have time to shop and like find, okay, where's this in town? And they literally, sometimes it was like, what can we get at 5 a.m? And sometimes that was fast food, hash browns, or, something that was still vegan. But again, it probably wasn't the healthiest thing. So they struggled too much, like the thru-hikers. So I think probably my best advice is, when you can eat healthy, but understand too that this is a temporary situation. And then learning from that experience on the trail, that's what I'm always thankful for when I come back from, say, traveling, or like an experience like the Appalachian Trail and spending time out in the woods. Like, you really appreciate the access to the food that you do have, and good food. And so I think as a thru-hiker, you can come back and I think a lot of times eat healthier, because even though you're maybe not exercising as much, you realize, like, okay, that was then. I was eating a lot of junk food because I had to, but now I have this choice. Now it's a little bit easier. And then making your own food and having some of your own food at, whether it's meal drops or people who are meeting you at times, making sure that you get that along with maybe the trail junk food, things that you may not have as good access to. So.
Do you have any standout favorite vegan meals or snacks that you recommend for someone who's doing a long distance backpacking trip?
Yeah, when you don't have access to food, when I'm on the trail, some of my favorite things, I've recently tried to do the no-cook method, especially on the Pacific Crest Trail in the warmer climates, as well as the desert, when the temperatures are warm enough where you're not always wanting a hot meal. And I've gotten a lot of fairly creative with soaking. Like, I'm a big fan of soaking refried beans, whether it's black beans or pinto beans, and those are easily ready. And then the beauty of those, you can have those sent to mail drops. And then I usually have fresh tortillas. I'm one of these guys who likes fresh tortillas, so I'll carry the extra weight of a fresh tortilla. Other times I've used things like dehydrated or freeze-dried rice and just soak that again. And a lot of these things, you plan for soaking the dinner at lunchtime. And it's just, you carry that extra water weight, but as soon as you get to camp, set up your tent, roll out the sleeping bag, you're ready to go. And it may not be piping hot, but I guess that just ease and comfort, especially when it's been bad weather. And you're like, gosh, I got to start up a stove right now. Yeah. So the no-cook method, I've learned a lot of different things from, which noodles work the best to just pre-soaking those. You don't even have to cook noodles. So sometimes if you want to experiment with it, I recommend people just even try one of, say, the backpacker freeze-dried meals or dehydrated meals, and just try just soaking that in water and play with maybe the no-cook method, just in terms of like ease, and you come into camp and food's ready for you. So that's a new technique that I've used. And don't be afraid to carry some fruits and vegetables. I tend to carry like greens or something on a backpacking trip. For the first couple of days, I'll carry some kale that eventually is going to go bad, so I need to eat that in a couple of days. But sometimes having that fresh vegetable or fruit. I used to have a buddy who used to haul watermelons in his backpack for the extra challenge, and then of course the fresh fruit. So it's kind of a nice way to do that too. But again, it's really a matter of like weight. I guess don't skimp on some fresh fruit or vegetables from time to time, just to add the mix.
Are there particular nutrients that people should be targeting? Do you favor certain fruits or vegetables for a particular vitamin that they possess?
I'm a big fan of greens, just because I think they pack the most, micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals for, the weight, and they don't have as much water weight to them. So like kale is one of my favorites, because it's pretty sturdy. Whereas like lettuce, if it gets, crammed in a pack, and it's a little bit more sensitive to packing. So kale can be a bit easier when it comes to packability, and it lasts for a good couple of days, not being refrigerated. So that's one of my favorites. If I were to go with like one that packs a lot of micronutrients. And if you don't want to even pack the real vegetable, another thing that I sometimes do in my trips is a powdered green drink. And that's something too, even on the Appalachian Trail where I was supported, it's finding that balance of where can you get the micronutrients and the vitamins, because a lot of times I'd come in late at night and it was all about carbohydrate, protein, and fat. And I wasn't worried so much about getting my greens and salads. So my whole way of thinking needed to shift from my normal diet where it does focus on a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. I did eat a lot of fresh fruit on the trail, but when it came to salads and greens and veggies, especially raw, there just wasn't enough time to chew all that food. And so it was like, okay, if I'm going to chew something and I only have 20 minutes to eat the maximal amount of calories and try to get 2,000 calories in, it's going to be, carbohydrate and dense protein sources, tofu, tempeh, even meat substitutes, sometimes, grains and beans. But a lot of it came down to, of course, fat. I was pouring olive oil. And so when it comes to like sheer calories, you can't go wrong with healthy fats. So there's everything from avocados to nut butters to olive oil. Don't be afraid of taking vials of oil. That's what I've done on a lot of backpacking trips, where I know I'm going to need to sustain calories day after day, and can't always just carry pure carbohydrate. So don't be afraid of it. And same thing with coconut oil. That's a great one too for the trail.
I'm a big fan of coconut oil.